Well, hello there. This is Glenn Gross. Hey, I've got an exercise for you that's kind of like a jazz exercise, but it's the kind of exercise I like to do when I want to stretch my mind. And I've been doing this exercise today, and I think you can do an exercise like this at almost any level of development on the trumpet or whatever instrument you play. It doesn't have to be always be an advanced exercise, but it's this idea that when you play, instead of thinking about what key you're in, think about the distance between notes. So for example, if I start on the low F sharp or E concert and I play a chromatic scale like this, those are all half steps, right? So according to Howard Hanson, who wrote a book in the 60s, or late 50s on harmonic materials of the tempered scale. You could also think of that as projection of the half step. So if I just take a half step, if I go a half step, and then I go another half step, and I go another half step, that's called projection of the half step. And of course, you could project the half step down too. Okay, now what happens if we project the whole step? Well, then we get the whole tone scale. That, by the way, that's called the chromatic scale when you project the half step. So if you project the whole step, then you get the whole tone scale. And you could project it down also. Well, you can keep doing this, going to every one of the intervals. Like if you want to talk about 3 half steps, we could call that a minor third. And if you project the minor third, you get what's called the diminished 7th chord. Well, today I want to talk about something related to these things, but slightly different, and that is the projection of 2 intervals at the same time. So if you want to, you can think about, I'm going to project both the half step and the whole step together. And when you do that, you get something which we call the diminished scale. Now, in order to do this projection, we're just going to alternate between half steps and whole steps. And this may take you a little while to get at first, but when you alternate between 2 different intervals, it can be thought of as projecting both. So let me illustrate that really quick. So if we start with the whole step and then go to the half step, we get this scale. And you can think of that as a combination of 2 diminished 7th chords, because it's these notes here, and combined with these notes. So if you put those 2 diminished 7th chords, which are just all minor thirds together, each corresponding note is going to be a whole step apart. So those are the notes that you play when you play alternating the whole step and the half step. Well, if you want to, you can change the order of those 2, which gives you different notes. And that would be starting with the half step first, and then go to the whole step. And some people call that the half-whole diminished scale. And these scales are very useful over different chords. But to really simplify it, why don't we just talk about the projection of the half step and the whole step at the same time? Well, you might notice that when you add the half step and the whole step together, you get the minor third. So every time that you have those 2 notes together, you're going to get the interval between the chord tones of a diminished 7th chord. Here's your diminished 7th chord. So if we keep alternating whole plus half, if I go, well, a whole plus a half is the minor third, so that's why you always hit the chord tones of the diminished chord every time. Okay, well, now here's the point of this video. Instead of projecting the half step and the whole step, let's see what happens when we project the half step and the minor third. Now, the minor third is 3 half steps together, okay? So we're going to go, when we project both these intervals at the same time, you can accomplish that by just alternating between the 2 intervals. So you can start with the half step or you can start with the minor third. I'm going to show you both ways. So if we start out with the half step, then it's going to sound like this. And some people call that the augmented scale, and you can sort of figure out why they call it that, because when you add the half step plus the minor third, you get the major third. So you get the augmented chord built into this exercise. So that augmented chord is all major thirds. And when you alternate a half step every time, and then a minor third, the half step plus the minor third gives you the major third. So every 2 notes of the so-called augmented scale gives you a note of the augmented chord, which is why they call it that. Okay, but we could switch the order of them, couldn't we? And if we switch the order of the 2, then isn't the sum going to be the same? I think that it will be for the chord that goes with the bottom note. So instead of going half step, minor third like we did before, I'm going to put the minor third first. There we go. There's the minor third. So minor third, half step, minor third, half step. I'm thinking this in my head. Sounds real mysterious, doesn't it? Well, these turn out to be really useful, these simultaneous projections of 2 intervals. They're they're like chameleon chords. If you study classical music, they're like Messiaen's modes of limited transposition, because you can only transpose these a few times, and then you duplicate the same scale starting on a different degree. They're mathematical forms that fit sort of in between a bunch of different keys. So there isn't a specific key associated with them. And that makes them very powerful as transitional elements when you're using a solo, when you're playing a solo. So the last thing I want to show you is, suppose we think in terms of combining the projection of the half step and minor third with changing the key of it, so that we're going to play the scale up, and then we're going to go up a half step and then play the same scale down. That's a little tricky way of modulating within the form of the simultaneous projection of 2 intervals. So I'm going to show you that right now. This is what I've been working on for the last half an hour. It's sort of driving me nuts because the progress is real slow, but I'm going to show it to you. Here we go. So we're going to start with this one. Now, that's the simultaneous projection of the half step plus the minor third. So as we explained already, the augmented chord is built in. Now we're going to go up a half step and do the same thing going down. So there you have it. So that kind of implies 2 augmented chords a half step apart. And it's actually, because there's 2 augmented chords built into each scale, it's even more interesting than that. But I want to play that for you a couple times just so you can get it in your ear. And then think about this, that we're not talking about keys here. We're just talking about a simple set of rules, namely simultaneous projection of two intervals. That's all you have to remember. And then you're going to alternate the intervals. So here we go again, simultaneous projection of the half step plus the minor third, and then going up a half step. And if you get these under your finger, you can turn them into kind of like flow studies, as if you're playing a Clark study or something, because it becomes very natural, and your lip is expanding and contracting as you cover the distance, however long the scale is that you choose to play. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. This was a quick presentation of simultaneous projection of multiple intervals according to Howard Hansen's book, which is subtitled Tools of the Tempered Scale, or something to that effect. I can never remember the title of this book, but it's a very, very good book. You look up Howard Hansen. He was the president of the music school at Eastman Conservatory back in the 50s. He was also a composer. He wrote symphonies. But he had the idea of coming up with a music theory that's not based on Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, and Haydn, that's just regurgitating the same stuff that conservatories have talked about for centuries. Instead, he wanted to come up with a new kind of theory that would cover all the different types of sounds that people had in the 20th century. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to try to keep these instructional videos going. Don't forget that if you want to practice this, you can rewind this and pause it and match my notes. This is a B-flat trumpet, and so you can match, if you're playing a B-flat trumpet or if you're playing a tenor sax, you can match the exact pitches. Or if you're playing some other instrument, you can still play along with me. This kind of exercise is beneficial on any instrument. All right, well, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and have a great day or night, whichever the case may be. This is Glenn Gross signing off. Bye for now.